Welcome to RHI's Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today, we are here with Maggie Weiland, Executive Director, San Francisco Entertainment Commission, where she facilitates an efficient, equitable, and community-focused permit process for social venues and events featuring live or DJ entertainment.
Hey Maggie, so great to meet you. So excited for this interview. I've heard so much about what you do there. Obviously, I'm close with Jocelyn, and I really am excited about this interview. So why don't we begin with just a little bit of a background of how you got to be doing what you're doing?
Sure. Hi, Jim. Just for those watching, my name is Maggie Weiland, and I'm the Executive Director of the San Francisco Entertainment Commission. I've now been with this office for almost 10 years. I began my work in this office as the Deputy Director, working under Jocelyn Kane, who was then the director at the time and had been with the office since its founding in 2003. So it's been a great ride being with this program for 10 years. I've been very focused since I became director in working on bringing our office up to speed in the digital era, making sure that all of our applications and our back end work is accessible to the public and to our permit applicants on a digital end to end format so that it makes it as simple and streamlined as possible. So that's been a huge goal of mine to see that through. And then all of the other great work that comes along with wearing the hat of a small regulatory agency. That's essentially our bread and butter, is making sure that all of our music venues and live events and all of our smaller brick and mortar small businesses are supported by our team in ensuring that they know how to operate in compliance, as well as being able to deliver all of that good fun to the public here in San Francisco.
Great. Well, now that you mentioned the San Francisco Entertainment Commission, can you give a brief history of how it was started?
Sure. Yeah, so I was obviously not with the team at the time, but we were born out of some strife between folks that were producing parties here in San Francisco, and were then being shut down without a lot of due cause or process by our city's police department at the time. And so a legislator who was then a supervisor, Mark Leno, who later became a senator here in California, created legislation along with major advocates here in the nightlife industry, including Terrence Allen and Audrey Joseph, that would create an entertainment commission to essentially be an intermediary body, public government body that could support venues in terms of having a security plan, sound limit in order for them to meet compliance standards and then not be shut down without due process. And so there is a lot of public feedback that goes into obtaining a permit with our office. And in that way, entertainment is sacred and it can't be taken away very easily. You have to actually be a bad actor and not be complying with the rules and have a history of enforcement issues that are quite extreme in order for us to even begin working on taking an action to shut a business down that offers entertainment. So it was really a protective measure. And also, the way that it was happening in the late 90s, a lot of the parties that the police were shutting down at the time were LGBTQ focused groups, and they felt very discriminated at the time. And so, having a body that is able to have representatives on the commission that come from the nightlife industry, that come from neighborhood background, from the health department, and then we also have a law enforcement seat to maintain that um, connection with the police department has been really key in making our office function. We're really proud of everything we do, and we've been now functioning as a department for 22 years, which is um, quite
Quite a long time.
significant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you predate most of the nightlife offices around the world, and I think in some cases Jocelyn was one of the predecessors to this idea of a night manager that other people are claiming
Mhm.
credit for.
Mm,
Um,
yep.
how is it structured? I know that you mentioned Alan and Audrey, who are both real champions, I
Mhm.
know, and I remember that part of that drive of this was during the period of AIDS and
Yep.
fundraising events that were being held that
Mhm.
seemed to be a, motivation for some of this
Mhm.
early formation, but it was actually created by a ballot measure, right?
Mhm.
And how is it structured? I think its structure is really quite unique too.
Mhm. Yes, so we were created by a ballot measure. However, we have run into the fact that it is a little bit more tenuous than we thought it was legally due to a ballot measure that was introduced this past year that fortunately failed. But we had been under the impression for a good 20 years that we were protected by charter. But the only thing that was developed within our charter is the makeup of our commission. So that is something that we want to take another look at. It's just an anecdote to add here, just because we had been under the impression that it would take a ballot measure to dismantle the Entertainment Commission in total, and that we were protected completely by charter, but it's something that we need to look at. But we were developed by a ballot measure, and the charter then created certain positions within the commission that were representative of different industries in the city that I just previously mentioned. So a couple of entertainment industry representatives on this body, as well as a health representative, an urban planning seat, a law enforcement seat, and 2 neighbor seats. And so it's 7 commissioners. And then our hearings are twice a month, and all of our brick and mortar permits have to go before the Entertainment Commission for review and approval, as well as conditioning of that permit, including, as I mentioned, a sound plan, as well as a security plan. And then our staff ensures compliance of those conditions. And when we were created in 2003, we were a very small staff, and Jocelyn was, a founding staff person that was able to physically take all of the police department permit files from the police department office to City Hall and make those permits under the Entertainment Commission's purview, which is very fascinating. It was just her, a director, and I believe 1 inspector and 1 commission secretary. We now have all of those same positions, plus a couple more inspectors and an administrative analyst who actually serves as a bit of a policy person in our office, as well as working on public relations for our office. And so we've expanded almost double in our staff since we started, which is fabulous. But at the same time, it matches the fact that we have doubled the amount of permits that we are regulating as well. So we have, I believe, over 700 unique businesses that we regulate in the city, as well as around 500 one-time event permits per year that we manage.
I recall that the Entertainment Commission was helped to spearhead an economic study, which led to the formation of Ben Van Houten's nightlife
Yep.
initiative in the
Mm-hmm.
Office of Workforce Economic and Workforce Development.
Yep.
Um, and so it seems like the two of you have some role in this whole area of what we call the social
Mm-hmm.
economy, whether it be festivals and daytime
Mm-hmm.
music events or nighttime, bars, nightclubs, anybody that has entertainment. So it's a whole kind of period of time that you have responsibilities for. And you're, like you said, a small regulatory body, which goes through the permitting process and the
Yep.
review by the commission before somebody can be authorized to have some form of sound through entertainment. but Ben's office, from what I understand, is much more about the economic development of it. So
Yeah.
how do you see each of you working together? I mean, how does this kind of partnership, because it seems like you're covering both bases, the
Hmm.
vibrancy piece and the safety piece and the planning
Hmm.
piece, what we call
Yeah.
about the building blocks. So how do you see you collaborate with Ben, and on what are some examples of what you've done?
I would say that Ben and I are soundboards for each other, and you know, we are in the field every weekend. We deal with permit applicants and permit holders on a daily basis. And so we're in the weeds in terms of seeing what issues our businesses might be experiencing, or on the flip side, ideas that they might have for improvements. And so we're able to share that with Ben. And then on the flip, he's an ideas man, which is incredible for him to have that job, because he is incredibly intelligent. I know you know that. He's come up with and executed many great ideas over the past, I think, 12 years he's been with that office. I used to work with him when I was in the film office prior to this. And so when he comes up with an idea, he's then able to share it with my staff and figure out, does this even make any sense? Is this something that is a need in the community? Should we be investing in this? And then if so, it's something that we would then collaborate on together as a team. So we work together constantly. We produce a summit ourselves annually as well, and we do that in tandem so that we're making sure that anything that we're covering for the summit is something that actually is a need coming from our community. So we survey them on an annual basis. We collaborate on the questions that we ask in that survey. Ben comes before our commission once a month, provides updates. He's able to then hear from commissioners and executive leadership on what they want to see from our collaborations as well. Anything that his office does, we then also parrot through all of our newsletters and social media. And so it's a really great partnership. We've done a whole lot together. I'd say over the last 5 years, it's been quite intense as we had to pivot during COVID. And so a lot of the work that we partnered on together were relief efforts at the time, and then visioning for the future for recovery here in San Francisco, specifically focusing on downtown. And so Ben has been very busy. I'm happy for him. He was able to hire a staff person that works with him now in OEWD. He has been solo that entire time until this past year. So now he has a little extra support because he's running quite a few programs right now. One of the driving programs that he's been working on is SF Live, bringing live outdoor events here to San Francisco, essentially putting dollars into a program like that, that then partners with independent live music venues for them to put together these events and promote them and have local artists performing at them, for residents to come out of their homes and come back into the city and experience entertainment. We've done a lot more together. Um, Try to think of more specific examples.
Well, as an example, because you're going to be on a
Yeah,
panel with Ben and Scott Wiener and Joe
yeah.
McDonald from ABC and John,
Mm-hmm.
who is one of the first venues in the state that took advantage of the new music license. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I know that Ben was involved, and I'm sure you were involved with that
Yeah.
to get that legislation, which kind of filled a gap between
Yeah.
having a bar license and a restaurant
Mm-hmm. Our
license. And
type 90s. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you can use that as an example of a
Yeah.
collaborative process.
Yeah. That's a really great one too, just because that really lowers barriers to entry for a lot of small businesses that didn't have a means to obtain a liquor license prior to that, and it filled a void. And it also makes it much more accessible for these live music venues to be hosting events for all ages as well, which is something that has been a passion project for Ben for the entire time I've known him. We're both from San Francisco, and he went to a lot of all ages shows when he was growing up here in the city. And so that's something that he's been trying to make more accessible to the live music venues. Um, that was a great collaboration. We'll also potentially be collaborating on 4 a.m. again because it's been reintroduced here in California for maybe the sixth time at this point. And so that's something that if it actually passes that this time, that's something that we would be working to implement and roll out locally, potentially with the Entertainment Commission, which would be great since this is our bread and butter, working with these same venues for extended hours premises work.
Yeah, I've been involved over the years with various, flexible hours legislation, worked with Seattle and trying to get it put into place there. And it was pretty close because they had a lot of the support from the police, the mayor, the city council members, the businesses. But it just coincided with the legalization of cannabis and also the shift in the alcohol distribution system in Washington state. So they
Yeah,
didn't take it up. But
yeah,
I think that what you have in San Francisco with your entertainment commission and with band should actually be a template for other cities that want to initiate this kind of 4 a.m. license because it really has the mechanism already established with a formal review process that goes before a commission that represents both the residents and the planning department and the health department and the police and the venue operators. So it seems that moving forward with the 4 a.m., that every city that wants to do something like that should copy what you
yeah.
guys have in San Francisco, which leads me to this other question, because as you know, this idea of an office of nightlife and nighttime economy office, staff that may not have an office, but that are given a title of, nighttime economy manager or director or czar or whatever you want to call it. And globally, in particular, it takes on a different form. In some of the more global cities, they tend to have more of the then focus, revitalization, vibrancy, more music. Whereas in the US, a lot of these nighttime managers are dealing with, crime and violence and residential disturbances around sound.
Right.
So if somebody were to look to you and say, what makes what you do different than some of these other offices, the way that you understand them,
Mhm.
and what lessons would you recommend to a city that would say, yeah, well, I think, we're starting, but we might not have it right. And if we look at San Francisco as pretty much having it right, how do you feel what you do differs from like Pittsburgh or New York or Atlanta
Mhm.
or, any of the
Yeah.
number of cities in the US or North America? And what recommendations would you make for anybody who wants to set up something similar to what you have?
Well, I would just say from the experiences that I've had and speaking with many other big and small cities in the United States, everybody's issue areas are a little bit different. Where they can begin and what resources they have to begin are different as well. And so when I speak to them, obviously I share where we're coming from. We're in such a I feel like we're in a very fortunate place because we have had so much time to develop as an agency. But the things that I feel really set us apart and really help us be so successful are our commission, being able to serve as the intermediary, as the folks that are the decision makers at the end of the day, so that our staff is able to do the work to present the facts and to come to them without opinion. We are able to, for example, if there is a business that has an enforcement timeline prior to even obtaining an entertainment permit, we're able to present those facts to the commission for them to be able to make an educated decision on conditions. Um, and that help serve us in a way because we're then able to go and regulate this business in a way that We're doing it based on facts. Again, we're not out there trying to crack down and say, we think you guys are a bad business, and so therefore, we're going to come and see you multiple times. The only reason we're coming multiple times is if you're getting multiple complaints and you're out of compliance each time. And so that leads me to the other piece that I feel like really sets us apart, and that I try to drive home anytime I talk to other big cities that are considering developing a regulatory office, is that you really need to put your resources into developing your enforcement team. You may even want to call them your compliance team, because again, we are not the police department, where we certainly do not approach any of our businesses in a top-down way. We're there to ensure that you are compliant, because we can then mediate with any of your neighbors. And that's really what we do best, is we serve as a mediation body, as a staff between neighbors that might have an issue with your sound and the business that is just trying to host entertainment and do it within the confines of the rules that are here in San Francisco. And so I think we've done quite a bit in terms of our sound development as well. And so our education of our inspectors, and in turn our businesses, is really solid. Everybody's getting the same information, and we're able to give every single business a specific sound limit, which is not something that we were doing until probably 7 years ago. I started creating a sound limit for every single business, so that those businesses knew how to operate in compliance, instead of looking at a piece of code that we still are governed by, but was very convoluted, because it essentially reads that you cannot exceed more than 8 decibels above the ambient at the property plane, which then really puts the onus on the business to determine what that even means. And so we go in and we hold the business's hand, we set that sound limit so that the business really understands what that means. They're then able to measure it in real time. And when we get a complaint that comes in, we can more than often verify that the business is actually operating in compliance, and then go back to the neighbor and do that education with them, which is really key. So because of that, we deal with very few neighbor issues on a long-term basis. They kind of come and go, which is incredible. And for that same reason, it also makes it easier for these new residential developments that come in, for those to not have any issues, because we're then dealing with businesses that know how to operate in compliance.
Wow, that's a great summary of your success. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be here today. And I'm sure we could talk a whole lot more about some other things that you do. Another one of the models is the sound agent of change, which really had a lot of its roots in San Francisco, but now is being copied all over the world. So
Mhm.
you have a lot of things to be proud of in terms of your work. And I'm sure that it'll continue to be a
Mhm.
great model for other cities. And so
Thanks,
I want to
Jim.
thank
Yeah.
you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in Sacramento.
You too. And I just want to end with saying it's on the shoulders of people that came before me that really created all of this amazing work for us to build off of. So I'm very grateful
Oh,
to all of those folks.
yeah, very noble and humble of you to say that. Well, thank you
Sure.
very much.
Yep. Thank you.